Today's learning target. I can use maps, globes, and geographic tools to gather, process, and report information about people, places, and environments. In order to be successful with this learning target, the first thing we need to do is see what types of maps are out there. So we need to understand the different purposes of maps and how to read them. And then once we understand that, we can begin to gather, process, and report out that information. So our essential question for this learning target is, what are some of the different types of maps? I'm going to show you 9 different types. I'm going to give you a definition. You'll get to see what they look like and then get some practice on trying to label them. Up first, political maps. I bet that you have seen these before. These are maps that show the names and boundaries of political geographic units. That means states, countries, and the picture here is of the whole world map. So if I look here, I see different colors and I see some lines that separate countries, like right here, this orange is Canada, and then below it is the United States. So a political map will show you essentially where different governments are located. So these are called sovereign nations. So Canada up here, this orange country, has one government, and then below it we have another leader. Mexico below us, they have another leader too. So if you think politics, government, that's really what is being shown throughout having different countries. We may see some major physical features or major human features like really big rivers, but the biggest focus here is on those boundaries and names of countries or states. Physical maps are another type, and these are the ones that show us landforms. Often there is shading involved, or rather always shading, but sometimes it's the same color and it's variations of the same color. Sometimes it's different colors. So the shading shows us landforms, which are natural features of a region, country, or even the whole world. That might include mountain ranges, and then rivers are usually also prominent features on physical maps. The colors on physical maps often include brown or green for land and blue for water. And I have a picture of a physical map. So we see different colors. They represent the elevation, and I can see, albeit it's very blurry, I see a key here which tells me the different elevations and how they are connected to the colors. The next type of map is called a topographic map, and this is the one that I think of as the fingerprint map because it looks like fingerprints to me. This is a neat type of map if you are going to go on a hike because it can show you the elevation changes along a trail so you understand how steep the incline is. So those wavy lines that remind me of a fingerprint are called contour lines, and they show elevation differences. A satellite map is produced from data recorded by satellite sensors that are up in outer space. They're transmitted to the Earth, and then computers process the data into images. Google Maps, or Google Earth rather, those are satellite maps. Satellites are really neat because they provide us images of places that we actually can't visit, like the moon or Mars. Choropleth maps. This is a tongue twister. Choropleth. These maps use color shading to represent different quantities or values. If I look at this one here, I see the United States, and it's in varying shades of bluish purple. So the darker colors represent greater quantities, while lighter colors usually represent smaller quantities. So here I see my map key, and it tells me that actually there is no title, but I can kind of infer the title by looking at the map key. population per square mile by state. So this map is telling me the population of each state. The darker the color, the more people live there. Dot density maps. These are really neat to look at. Each dot is representing, in this case on this map here, each dot is representing 1 million. So the dots correlate with a particular feature or data, and we can eyeball a dot density map and see where that data is heavily concentrated. So in this map, if one dot equals 1 million, the areas where I can't even see dots, like this area over here on the East Coast, that has a big number. So I'm not sure, since there is no title of this map, I'm not sure what those dots represent, but whatever it is, a lot of it's going on here in New England. Graduated symbol maps. These show symbols of different sizes, and the bigger the symbol, the bigger the quantity. Usually the symbol is a circle, but sometimes, depending on the map's theme, it might be a different shape. Like, for example, a map all about population data, instead of a circle, it might be people. So the bigger the symbol, the higher the quantity. So for this map, it talks about US oil consumption. So I see some really big circles, which means that those states consume a lot of oil. If you ever watch the news and you hear about the weather report, the map that is being projected is called an isoline or isopleph map. These maps use lines to connect points of equal value, like temperature, rainfall, or elevation, to show you a segment that shares that feature. In this particular map that you're looking at right now, it's talking about the speed of winds. So I have varying shades of blue. The baby blue, all of this baby blue area has the same mile per hour winds, so that's 10 to 20 miles per hour. And then the darker blue has a different value, which looks like it's 20 to 30 miles per hour. And last but not least is my most favorite map. It's called a cartogram. And when I show you the example, you're going to probably be like, oh my word, this is really weird. A cartogram is almost like you take a map and you stretch it, and maybe you smush it. Whatever you do, you distort the size and shape. And its purpose is to show you some kind of statistical data. So, for example, if I have a cartogram and I'm looking at population, and I have a map of the world, suddenly China would be ginormous because the population of China is so large. So even though if I look at a map of the world, for example, let's talk about states, okay? Alaska is the largest state, but it does not have the largest population. So it's the largest state by area, but it does not have that many, there are not that many people that live there. So if it was a cartogram of population, all of a sudden California would be much bigger than Alaska because California has a lot more people than Alaska does. So let's take a look, shall we? This is a cartogram. And although to me it always looks like a butterfly, that is actually a cartogram of the United States. Can you believe it? You gotta look at what those symbols or those abbreviations are, like AK, that's Alaska, MT, Montana, OR, Oregon, and then all this area right here is smushed. That's the Midwest. That's where Ohio would be. Florida is now just a really long line that looks just like a pencil mark. So what is going on here? Well, I look at the title of this map and it says Home States of Climbers on Mount Rainier 2010. Mount Rainier is a mountain, a very, very tall mountain, and it's in Washington State. So all the statistics here, all the data are how many people climb Mount Rainier. So the bigger the state, the way that it is stretched out means that more people climb Mount Rainier who live in those states. So Mount Rainier being in Washington State's pretty big. Why do you think that is that more people in Washington State visit Mount Rainier? Probably because you are not having to travel very far to get there. Same thing with Alaska. Alaska is pretty close to Washington State. So probably you don't have to travel very far to get to that mountain, whereas in Florida you have to trek halfway or all the way across the country. Same thing with all these states and the New England states. So again, a cartogram distorts your data to prove a point, and it just makes for a really interesting visual aid. Because if I look at this, it does not look at all like the United States, but it's proving a point, and I'm able to quickly identify the states that have the most climbers. Okay, so now it's your turn. On the back of page number 12, after you've taken all your notes, you see small little maps. You're asked to label each map with the correct vocabulary word for what type of map it is. There are 9 of them. I'm going to go through the same exact pictures but in color for you to see. There's one. What type of map might this be? And remember, you can always pause your video if you want to stay here for longer. There's another one. There's another one. Again. And that one, I think, yep, that one is the last map. So you can stop if you want to check those out for a longer period of time. Now, the last thing I need you to think about after you've filled in page number 12, you've taken the notes on the front, and you've went through all the map types on the back. Your task now is to find 2 maps to add to your Heritage Project presentation. But I need you to ask yourself, what do these maps do to enhance my presentation? So if you're researching Russia, don't Google map of Russia and just plop in the first map you see. Make sure it's a map that really adds to your presentation. It's neat to look at. It's connected to what you're talking about. Like if you're focusing a lot on languages spoken in Russia, maybe you find a map that is a choropleth map that talks about where languages are spoken by population. Make sure that the 2 maps that you find are different. So I can't have 2 political maps. I could have a political map and a physical map. I could have a cartogram and an isoline map, okay? But part of the criteria is finding 2 different maps. That is all.